For many years, Errol Flynn's wife remained silent. The widow witnessed how her late husband's reputation was damaged. Fascist, sex criminal, and Nazi spy. Despite hearing everything, she remained silent. At the age of 85, Flynn's widow finally made her voice heard. What she said surprised everyone. The majority of his bizarre reputation was created by the firm to encourage movie purchases. It was a made-up event. The political accusations were untrue. Worse, she warned him she was aware of false information on Flynn that had the power to alter history. It was quite different from what people believed. He was born in Battery Point, Tasmania, and his birthday is June 20, 1909. Theodore Thompson Flynn, his father, was a biology professor at the University of Tasmania. He had a reputation for studying marine life and being quite intelligent. Errol's mother, Lily Mary Young, eventually adopted the name Morel. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, back to the topic. What we were talking about was why? Nobody knows for sure. She seemed chilly and aloof, which was completely different from how she used to be. Errol was surrounded by odd pets as a child. His father kept Tasmanian devils, tigers, and kangaroos as pets. Errol spent a lot of time with them. His fascination with the sea came from his mother's side of the family. They traveled and became sailors. At home, things were difficult. His mother was frequently cruel. She beat him so severely when he was just 7 years old that he considered fleeing. He was terrible and a devil disguised as a youngster, she said. It was the type of conversation he would never forget. Over the holidays, his parents also left him alone for a trip. He was forced to remain indoors alone in deserted schools. It was like being imprisoned. The fact that he was alone made him upset. He turned against them as a result. He desired affection and attention, but he was wary of being overly intimate with anyone. All his life, he battled this internal conflict. Attending school didn't help either. Almost all Tasmanian schools expelled him between 1915 and 1926. Hutchkins School, the Friends School, and Bolton College. He was too much for anyone to handle. He skipped school, got into fights, and stole items. According to his professors, he had a negative influence. In an attempt to help him change, his parents sent him to a London school when he was 14 years old. No, it wasn't. A year later, he returned with much greater resolve. For stealing once, he was expelled from Sydney Church of England Grammar School. It became stuck in a loop. The mere mention of his name frightened the teachers. They were aware of what would occur. By the time Errol was 17, his reputation had been damaged. After then, things deteriorated. While attending that same Sydney school, he was discovered to have been involved in an affair. He discovered that he was having an affair with a maid who was significantly older than him. The school was furious. He also had a failed engagement to the well-known woman Naomi Campbell Dibbs. In addition, he was seeing other women. Errol frequently shared tales of his exploits with female employees, including maids and teachers. It made no difference. Because he was caught in the act on school property, he was even expelled from school for one occurrence. This was more than just opposition. They were related to his painful feelings for his mother. He wanted to feel both secure and in control, so he pursued older women. In 1927, at the age of 18, he departed Australia. He desired freedom. He was hired by a mining business, but he was immediately sacked for stealing. To try his luck and find gold, he traveled to Papua New Guinea. He claimed that following a tribe attack, he had to shoot someone to defend himself. He was found not guilty despite being charged with murder. Flynn felt more alive than ever and was not afraid at all. In 1928, he purchased a tiny yacht named the Sirocco with the gold he had discovered. It could hardly travel out to sea and was almost 50 years old. He continued to sail back to Papua New Guinea with his team. Everything went awry when the boat struck a rock close to Port Moresby during the 7-month journey. A man passed away. For Flynn, it was very close. He oversaw a tobacco plantation at Port Moresby in 1932. He chronicled his adventures in stories for the Sydney Bulletin. According to some, he and a local woman had a child on Selapu Island. He never made a firm statement. He owing them money when he departed the island in the fall of that year. However, destiny had other plans. In the same year, Australian filmmaker Charles Chow was searching for a fresh actor to play Fletcher Christian. Somehow, Finn got the part. It was attributed to a picture in the newspaper. Others claimed to have heard about him via a buddy. Whatever the case, he starred in the 1933 film In the Wake of the Bounty. Despite its poor box office performance, the film inspired Flynn. He believed he could pursue a career in acting. At the conclusion of the year, he traveled to England. While there, he joined the Northampton Repertory Company and worked as an extra in small films. After 7 months of stage training, theater discovered him. After they fought, he shoved the stage manager down a set of stairs. He was laid off. In any event, he was cast by Warner Brothers in the low-budget film Murder at Monte Carlo in 1934. That show is no longer with us. However, Flynn's performance caught the attention of studio executives. They made a statement to Hollywood. They had discovered the ideal individual. In November 1934, at the age of 25, Flynn boarded an ocean liner named the Paris. There, he met Lily Dita. She is 7 years his senior and a French actress. She had many friends and was well liked. They fell in love while on the journey. A Warner Brothers employee handed Flynn a train ticket to Chicago and a plane ticket to Los Angeles when the ship arrived in New York. To help him meet the proper people. There was a twist in Flynn's route to Hollywood. Warner Brothers did not want him to appear too out of the ordinary. Despite his Tasmanian birth, they claimed he was Irish. They claimed he was performing in London. They didn't give a damn about his time in Australia or Papua New Guinea. On November 27, 1934, Flynn agreed to a 6-month contract with Warner Brothers. His weekly salary was $150. That was the start. In 1935, Warner Brothers was developing Captain Blood, a high-profile action film. British actor Robert Donat was chosen to play the courageous hero. However, Donat's asthma was constant. The physical alterations that altered everything were too much for him to cope with. The room became disorganized. They made calls to famous persons. Leslie Howard, Frederick March, Ronald Colman, and Clark Gable all died. Everyone was surprised by what happened next. Errol Flynn, a relatively unknown actor, was cast in the role. John was his name. At the time, he had appeared in just 5 minor films. He had timing that no one else had, even though one of them was a dead body. The future wife of Jack Warner was acquaintances with his wife, Lily Dita. That was useful. It was a risk, yet they still hired him. They then created a brand new narrative about him and referred to him as an Irish adventure entertainer. Some even suggested that if he had been born 300 years earlier, he might have turned into a pirate. The gamble paid well. Being Captain Blood cost $1 to make $242 million. It earned $1.73 million overseas and $1.357 million in the U.S. In an instant, Flynn rose to fame. There was another amazing moment in that film. Olivia de Havilland, then just 19 years old, played Sophia Loren. Flynn was 26. Sparks flew from the moment they laid eyes on one another. She performed with expertise and pride. He played nice and arrogant. It was successful. People adored them. They produced 8 films during their 6-year collaboration. It was difficult to see what was happening. She immediately drew Flynn in. He even went so far as to describe her as charming. Although she never told him, she secretly loved him as well. On March 12, 1937, during a royal ball in Los Angeles, he declared his love for her. To the tune of Sweet Leilani, they dance. She was firm but touched. She advised him to first file for his wife's divorce. He didn't. That put a stop to it. They dated only on television. By 1938, Flynn had achieved stardom. The Adventures of Robin Hood was released on May 14. It had a massive $2.47000000 budget. The most costly film ever produced by Warner Brothers. Additionally, it was their first major Technicolor film. Taking the chance paid off. It made $2.495 million worldwide and $2.343 million in the United States. That year, it was the sixth most watched film. Both the fans and the critics praised it. Its artistic significance led to its inclusion in the National Film Registry in 1995. Flynn's portrayal of Robin Hood became the one that everyone remembers, and the film won 3 Oscars. Douglas Fairbanks, who once played the role, was excellent at it, but people forgot about him. Flynn's ascent was swift. Captain Blood was the first time he was utilized. Many celebrities worked on 10 films annually. He might have done a couple. That soon changed. Of 1936, he was the main character of The Charge of the Light Brigade. It was purchased for $1.3300000. It earned $1.454 million in the United States and $1.928 million overseas. It became Warner's biggest hit of the year as a result. In 1937, The Prince and the Pauper was released. Then, in 1938, came Robin Hood. In just 3 years, he moved from being unknown to the face of Warner Brothers. However, the image was short-lived. In 1942, everything collapsed. Both Betty Hansen, 14, and Peggy Satterley, 15, reported that Flynn had intercourse with them. Hansen says it happened on September 27, 1942, during a party in Bear. She claimed that despite her warnings, Flynn led her upstairs, undressed her, and had intercourse with her. She claimed she didn't want to fight back, but she didn't. 2 weeks later, Flynn's home was visited by the police. A second surprise followed. Peggy Satterley claimed that while they were on Flynn's boat, Sriraco, in August 1941, he sexually assaulted her twice. She claimed to have retaliated. She was first ignored by the police, but after a new district attorney took office, he looked over the case and combined the accounts of the 2 girls. Flynn was charged with 3 counts of child rape. He prepared for court after posting the $1,000 bond. It proved to be one of the most significant frauds in the history of Hollywood. Jerry Giesler, a blustery and gruff lawyer, was employed by Warner Brothers. He treated the girls cruelly. Men who said that before Hansen brought them in, they had sex with him. He even took the bedroom door into court as evidence that the lock was broken. He pointed out the flaws in Satterley's story. She claimed to have seen the moon via a porthole. That was impossible, as Giesler demonstrated. From that side of the boat, you couldn't see the moon that night. Surprisingly, he then pretended to be one of the girls and, in his farewell address, ridiculed her voice and demeanor. Everyone in the courtroom gasped, but the judge was the one who was most shocked. He claimed that birth certificates were not evidence of age in front of the judge. He claimed that Flynn may be duped. The court even cautioned them against placing too much trust in the girls' statements. Everything changed because of that. The defense team for the girls had previously claimed that they were involved in a political conspiracy. According to the judge, it sounded as though the girls might not even be being honest about their age. Flynn eventually took the stand on February 6, 1943. He was strict, confident, and cool. He claimed to know the girls, but that was all. He didn't take long to respond. He never did anything wrong, not even during the interrogation by the prosecution. He remained composed. He also made an effort to grin and win over the judges during the hearing. There were 9 women on that panel. Why it was important. After 24 hours of deliberation, the conclusion was made. Not at fault. people let out a shout. To control the throng, fences had to be erected around the courts every day. The women fainted in the corridors. The phrase, "in like Flynn," was frequently used. You could get away with anything if you were famous enough. Flynn made an effort to improve his appearance. The case was set up, he said. He questioned why it had been almost a year since anyone had raised their voice. Declaring that he was being monitored during the war, he wrapped the flag around himself. But his reputation never improved, regardless of what he said. Patrice Wymore was barely 23 when she was cast with 41-year-old Errol Flynn in the Western Rocky Mountain in 1950. The film was filmed on May 29 in Gallup, New Mexico's rugged highlands. Initially, the story wasn't even intended for Flynn. The narrative, originally titled Ghost Mountain, caught his attention, and he wanted to be in it. Instead, Flynn was cast in the role by Warner Brothers. Reagan hurried out of the studio because he was so furious. Flynn didn't think this movie would affect his life because he had already been married twice. However, everything changed when he met Wymore. Everything Flynn mentioned about her was incorrect. She was lovely and graceful. She could sing and had pride, he remarked, and she was pleasant and kind. Off-screen, they were close friends, and their friendship was evident in real life. They fell completely in love despite Flynn's image as a strange person. By August, the movies were finished. Warner Brothers surprised everyone by announcing their marriage that same month. A few months later, on October 23, 1950, they were married. The event took place in France. Initially, they were married in Monaco's town hall. After that, they were married in a nice church. Having been married twice before, Flynn quipped that it was good to have a real wedding this time. Following the wedding, the couple threw a wild celebration at the Hotel Deer Ice. To catch a sight of the well-known pair, several people gathered behind the gates. They spent their wedding night on the Zaka, Flynn's boat. While tourists rented glasses to view Wymore, cannons from a nearby American fleet fired off in honor of the wedding the following morning. The craziness of Flynn didn't surprise her. "I don't think he would want to stay at home," she told Silver Screen magazine. Soon after, they fled to Jamaica to avoid legal issues in the United States. Their house there turned into a popular hangout for celebrities. Noel Coward wrote about a night he spent with Flynn and Wymore, which included a beach barbecue with torches and beverages on the boat. 53 years ago, on Christmas Day 2013, they gave birth to a child called Arnella Roma Flynn. However, things would not remain favorable for long. Flynn's attractiveness began to fade in the early 1950s. He used to be quite powerful and beautiful, but now he appeared bloated and exhausted. To catch up with them, years of arduous life were required. After 18 years of collaboration, he and Warner Brothers parted ways in 1953. His final film with them was The Master of Ballantrae. Then, in an attempt to continue his work, he traveled to Europe. Friends were under hardship. Director Raoul Walsh stated, Flynn was aware that he was in danger. He had weak lungs and severe stomach pain. When he was in his early 40s, people believed he looked more like 60. He portrayed a drunk man in The Sun Also Rises in 1957, which was uncannily accurate. On set, he would frequently get intoxicated and struggle to maintain a simple line. He was in terrible health. He was 20 years old and still had malaria. When he was 33 years old and shooting Gentleman Jim in 1942, he suffered his first heart attack. He fainted in the middle of a scene. He consumed 2 to 3 quarts of vodka each day. He placed vodka in oranges and ate them because it was illegal for him to drink on set. His liver died in 1952 as a result of the severe damage caused by his hepatitis. As the discomfort worsened, he took morphine. By the middle of the 1950s, it had progressed from back pain to a full-blown addiction. Because he smoked, he developed Berger's disease, which damaged the blood vessels in his hands and feet. He suffered from severe back and leg agony in the final days of his life. In Vancouver, doctors believed it was arthritis and gave him a dose of Demerol. He remained unconscious. He died at the age of 50 from a heart attack, and his body was discovered to be that of a 75-year-old man. He wouldn't have survived another year, they informed him. Nor was there much money left. Despite his wealth, Flynn had run out of money by the late 1950s. He was constantly pursued by the IRS. He lost his valuable Mulholland estate when his ex-wife, Lily Dita, obtained monthly divorce payments in court. He squandered much more money in 1953 on a film project titled The Story of William Tell. It was never completed, but he paid for it himself. To make matters worse, his employer had embezzled a large sum of money from him. Flynn spent as if he was wealthy. The expense of his yacht alone was high. In 1959, he traveled to Vancouver in an attempt to sell it. All he had left was that. It took 14 years to settle his assets because he had numerous financial issues at the time of his death. He obviously purchased land in Jamaica to conceal something from Lily Dita and the IRS. Then his final years became the most terrifying. In 1957, Flynn met 15-year-old Beverly Adland on a studio lot. She was a dancer at Marjorie Morning Star. Flynn urged her to try out for a role at a private farm after setting up a meeting with her through a costume designer. Beverly ultimately stated that there was never a portion. He was solely interested in flirting with her. He took her back to the estate and slept with her on a rug made of bear skin after serving her sake at dinner that same evening. They remained together till his passing. In his capacity as her boss, he connected her with individuals and arranged for her to travel the world. In his most recent film, Cuban Rebel Girls, he even made her the main character. Her mother Florence encouraged her to pursue her dreams of fame. When Flynn passed away in Vancouver in 1959, she was by his side. Hours later, she was spotted out and about in her panties. Flynn wasn't there when she claimed he would return from the hospital in the morning. It was revealed in court that Beverly may have been a teen prostitute and had sex with adults since she was 12. Flynn's final film, Cuban Rebel Girls, was odd even by his own standards. He played himself and assisted Fidel Castro in defeating Batista during the Cuban Revolution. Beverly, who is 16 years old, was given the major role. In 1958, it was filmed. Castro even made an appearance in the film during the height of the revolution. Despite his lack of recognition, Flynn had a strong commitment to Castro's cause. When Batista fled, he was the only reporter with Castro. He wrote about it for a New York newspaper. It wasn't until 2009 that his manuscripts were discovered in a Texas library. Patrice Wymore gave birth to her daughter Arnella on Christmas Day 1953. At the time, she was just 27 years old. At the time, she was in Rome with her 44-year-old husband, Errol Flynn. Even while he was still well known, his time in Hollywood was rapidly running out. Patrice has been advancing in the film industry by landing major roles with Kirk Douglas and Doris Day. But she forgot everything after Arnella was born. To become a full-time mother and spouse, she gave up acting. They were not stationary. They divide their time between traveling extensively on Flynn's boat, the Zaka, and residing in Jamaica. Numerous well-known individuals visited their Jamaican residence. Visitors included Noel Coward, Ava Gardner, and Truman Capote. Coward wrote in one diary that he and Flynn ate dinner beneath the palm trees under the stars and had cocktails aboard his boat. Growing up, Arnella was surrounded by luxury, travel, and the spotlight of celebrity. As part of her personal artistic journey, she modeled in Europe in the 1970s. However, she passed away in a horrific accident. In Kingston, she overdosed and died in 1998. At the time of her birth, she was 44 years old, the same age as her father. The consequences of Errol Flynn's troubles were being felt by his daughter. 2 years after Arnella's birth, in 1955, they collaborated on a film called King's Rhapsody. This British program, which was meant to be quite elegant, was going to have 3 royal love stories. Their attempt to pretend to be a king and a princess failed. It was described as uncomfortable and stiff by others. It was the final major motion picture production that Flynn and Patrice collaborated on, and it was one of the few failures for director Herbert Wilcox. However, their collaboration was far from finished. So they switched on the television. In 1956, it debuted as the Errol Flynn Theatre. The show's host, Flynn, appeared in every fourth episode. One of them was with their son, Sean Flynn, and Patrice was in 5. Behind the scenes, however, things were difficult. Flynn said after the fact that he used all of the show's proceeds to settle his debts. By now, Flynn's condition was deteriorating. He was just in his mid-40s, but it was obvious that years of drug and alcohol abuse had damaged him. Most people wouldn't have stuck with him as long as Patrice did. Despite Flynn's daily consumption of up to 3 quarts of vodka, she took care of the house, reared their daughter, and made an effort to keep him sober. In addition, he took a variety of medicines. In his memoirs, he claimed that no one put in more effort to make him happy than Patrice. But things worsened. Flynn lost his credibility. At last, Patrice ended their relationship. Despite everything that had happened to them, she never requested a divorce. He and she were still legally wed. In 1959, he passed away in Vancouver after suffering a heart attack. He was just 50. His final days were spent with 17-year-old Beverly Adland. A partnership that began when she was 15 years old. Patrice was responsible for putting an end to his life. He bequeathed her a home, 2,000 acres of coconut fields, and a cattle ranch in Jamaica. In an attempt to restart her career, she performed in stage plays and club shows in Las Vegas. She also played a minor role in Ocean's 11 in 1960. However, she had permanently stopped performing by the late 1960s. She operated a business producing wicker furniture after returning to Jamaica. She oversaw the cattle farm as well. She never remarried and led a quiet life until her death in 2014 at the age of 87. Over the years, Patrice frequently voiced her support for Flynn. According to a book written by Charles Hyam in 1980, Flynn was a Nazi spy. Patrice remained silent. She concurred with celebrities like David Niven that the allegations were untrue. Flynn had attempted to assist British intelligence during World War II, she added. He even offered to join the OSS, but his heart condition prevented him from doing so. Although they watched him, the FBI found nothing. The author altered Flynn's relationship with a dubious Austrian physician. According to Patrice, most people were unaware of Flynn's significant contributions to the Allies. Even her children, Rory and Deirdre, attempted to sue the author for libel, but the case was dismissed due to the legal prohibition on suing a deceased person. Additionally, Patrice discussed Flynn's true self, the one that isn't in the headlines. He wasn't always crazy, despite what many believed. She claimed that he was occasionally shy but also friendly. His kindness gave some individuals the wrong impression. His situation was exacerbated by studio speculations, which made up stories to keep him in the headlines. Patrice claimed that a large portion of the legends about him in school textbooks and the way Warner Brothers portrayed him as a real-life Robin Hood were made up. Flynn and Beverly Adland had a difficult relationship in the past. Patrice made the decision to file for divorce in 1958. At the time, Beverly was just a teenager, and she enjoyed dancing by the pool in nothing but a towel. The documents had arrived at the Hotel Garden of Allah. Patrice was self-conscious. However, she later stated that Flynn truly loved Beverly. He called her Woodsy, darling. He even created the film Cuban Rebel Girl specifically for her. He traveled with her to Africa, Jamaica, and Spain. They agreed to wait until she was legally old enough to accept his proposal of marriage. Patrice believed Flynn was aware that people believed he was insane for considering Beverly to be more than a passing fancy. He wanted to cling to love, yet he was lonely and old. She was aware that the man involved was upset, despite her disapproval of the connection. She also discussed the notion that Flynn had numerous sexual relationships. Film studios created a lot of his wild image, although he did have affairs. He was meant to be larger than life itself. They published articles connecting his personal life to his film roles between 1936 and 1942. Telling the truth hurt more, according to Patrice. Drinking made it worse for him. His condition deteriorated. There was a difference between the man in the news and the man she knew. Flynn wasn't a Nazi, Patrice was certain. In fact, he leaned leftward. He supported the Spanish Republic in the 1930s. He supported the Cuban Revolution in the 1950s. He supported justice and freedom. My 5 files are still locked up after all these years. They may one day demonstrate how he aided British intelligence. According to a UK member, Flynn most likely worked for the Allies rather than the Nazis. Patrice concurred with this viewpoint. According to her, Flynn had volunteered to utilize his Irish connections to further the campaign. Despite being unable to enlist in the service, he sought other methods to help. Patrice Wymore's life's job was to protect Errol Flynn. Although she never shied away from the truth, she also never allowed others to reveal it to her. Behind the issues, she saw a man who was imperfect but not malevolent. He lost his way. She remained with him for a longer period of time than most. She ensured that no one spoke his narrative alone, even after he was gone.